Hello, welcome. I'm Masood Raja, and today I would briefly like to share my ideas about the private school industry in Pakistan. And this is one of the reasons I've launched this separate channel so that I can talk about contemporary issues from a political and cultural perspective without disturbing the overall ambience of the channel. That's why Post-Colonial Space deals with my educational materials, and this channel allows me to sometimes speak candidly about issues that concern me personally or make me reflect personally, but also allows me to share those ideas. So if you look at the Pakistani educational system below the university level, there are, of course, two main streams of it. One are the government schools. These are federally funded schools or provincially funded schools, which are usually underfunded. And if you are in the rural areas, most probably you'll have one teacher per elementary school or two at the most. That is a fact. Then in the cities, these schools, which used to be good, viable institutions and produced great people and great scholars, because of lack of funding, these schools, the government schools whose job it is to educate our children, increasingly have been defunded, impoverished to a point where they can't really deliver the kind of education they are meant to. And that gap has been now filled by private schools. Now, first and foremost, these private schools are profit-earning entities. If you look at the 3 or 4 chains of private schools in Pakistan, their owners are billionaires. Okay, so they are in it to make money. How do they sell this education? They sell this education as English medium. Within that, they either follow the O-level system or the Cambridge or Oxford system. So the promise is that your children would learn great English and they'll have a great future in Pakistan. But also, by and large, these schools sell the dream that your children will be able to go and study abroad and maybe settle there. There is nothing wrong with that. I don't think so. There is anything wrong with having an international curriculum which prepares students as the citizens of a globalized world. But the problem with these institutions, other than they being profit-earning institutions and institutions that exploit teachers' labors. Because remember, the teachers in the private school systems are underpaid and have no protections. They have no unions and no government protection. But the problem that I see is that children who are studying in these schools, they do not get a balanced education. They might become really good and critical thinkers, but they are not being trained in the valuable things of their own culture, right? And if they don't study Urdu and don't study subjects that teach them about their own culture and history, then all we are imprinting on them in that colonial sense is that what we are teaching you is more valuable. And people who don't know it are either dumb or they are Paindu or they don't know anything, right? So these students, instead of becoming, by and large, more responsive citizens, aware of the class hierarchies where they live, are increasingly becoming detached from their own culture. This is my personal reading based in my experience with people I know. Now, of course, if you are parents and sending your children to these schools, do correct me on that. And I think part of the reason your children would be grounded in your own culture is because you have the time to do that for them, to supplement the education that they are getting. But by and large, the government schools are not capable of delivering what they are supposed to because education is not highly funded, right? The private schools are selling our children this promise of a future elsewhere in the world, and hence creating their desire and placing it in this elsewhere. So as a result, if these kids don't get into a US or Canadian university, they feel as if they have failed. But also the educational system itself dislocates their desires, right, and makes parts of their own country hostile places to them. I still have hope that despite these disadvantages, if these children have certain other influences which grounds them in their own culture while giving them a global education, maybe they can be a catalyst for change. And the reason I insist on this balance on native cultural education and a modern education is because, in a way, I am a product of that system. I went to a village school, then went to an Urdu medium school, then went to an English medium school. And all those experiences helped me shape into the kind of person, a human being or a scholar who has investments in all those areas of my own personal past, and it informs my scholarship. It actually makes it better, right? Knowing Farsi literature makes my work better. Knowing the history of Urdu literature makes my work better. Knowing, of course, the English literature and theory makes my teaching better, makes my scholarly work better. So, but I'm not suggesting that these people should replicate my life, but what I'm saying is that we do need to look at these schools critically and ask them what aspects of the national history or culture or regional culture are they incorporating in their curricula, right? How are they treating their employees, right? What are the employee rights? And how much profit are they making? I mean, that profit should be reported so that parents are not charged these exorbitant prices. So this is the divide between the government school and the private schools. But do keep in mind that thousands, rather millions of children who have no access to the government education or the private schools are also being absorbed by orphanages, by madrasa schools. And there is nothing wrong with that. I think madrasas can give great education too if the national curriculum is implemented there. And then, of course, the government oversight in seeing how these children are treated, especially if they are orphans, right? Because they are also the future of Pakistan. So these are some of the things that, I think about. I haven't written anything substantial about it, but I thought I should talk about it a little bit so that at my level I can start a conversation. There is, of course, beautiful works on the madrasa education. There is a book there. I think Tariq Rahman wrote something about it, and other scholars. So I'm not saying Pakistani scholars are not working on it. And in terms of critical studies of Pakistani educational policy, I think Dr. Shahid Siddiqui, a wonderful Pakistani scholar, has a great book on the Pakistani educational policy, but also the implications of not implementing it correctly. I have read this book and I believe in his argument, and so I highly recommend that you should check it out. So overall, what is at stake is the national future of Pakistan and the future of its next generations, right? And if there is no enlightened educational policy that is implemented, and if more resources are not available for primary education, pre-college education, then considering that Pakistan right now has one of the highest population growth rates in the world, the chances for success of the nation, but also for people to have a better and peaceful lives, will increasingly diminish, right? So overall, I think while these private institutions do serve a purpose, they only cater to the upward mobile middle class. And what's left behind in the wake is a huge segment of Pakistani population, both urban and rural, who are not getting access to quality early education, and then those inequalities multiply as they grow in their lives and seek professional lives and live as private, civic citizens. So these are some of my thoughts, and please feel free to put me right or share your ideas with me. There are great scholars in Pakistan who have been working on it all their lives. I just mentioned Dr. Shahid Siddiqui. He actually writes about education in his weekly Urdu columns, and he talks about it in public. There are scholars from Sindh, Balochistan, who constantly talk about the need for early education. So there is no dearth of scholars or activists in Pakistan who are working on this. So in a way, I don't want anyone to get this idea that I think that no one else is doing it. I am just adding my voice to it as someone who believes in the efficacy of education, but especially in the significance of early education. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for your time. And as always, I'm delighted that you are here, and I am grateful for your support. I will now see you next time with something new on some other topic. Until then, stay safe, take care of each other, and as always, peace and love.